Hey sweet boys, so this video I wanted to focus on last week's Come Follow Me because there were just some thoughts I had that I wanted to tell you about, and then some thoughts that weren't mine that I wanted to tell you about. So the first thing is that I was listening to this podcast about the Come Follow Me lesson last week about Moses and the 10 plagues, to get Pharaoh to let the people go. And it was really interesting because they pointed out, it was a podcast with two men talking about it, and they pointed out that in that time in Egypt, that Pharaoh was supposed to be like the most powerful god of all the Egyptian gods. So Moses coming along and saying that his God is saying, you need to let the people go, that it was basically turning into this huge power struggle. And that's why Pharaoh kept not listening and not letting the people go, because it was this big power struggle, which I thought was really cool. I thought that was very interesting. And then the other thing that they pointed out that was really interesting to me is with the plagues, at least with the signs at first, where Aaron turned his staff into a snake, and it was Aaron, yeah, anyway, Moses and Aaron turned the staff into a snake, and the magicians of Pharaoh were able to do the same thing with their staffs, but then Moses' staff ate his snake staff ate their snake staffs. And that was important because a staff was kind of a representation of like authority, so it was kind of like a sign that the God of Israel had more authority than the Egyptian gods. And then there's other thing that I found that was really interesting. My friend shared it, and I actually pulled it up on this other phone so I would be able to read it to you. It was kind of talking about how like the 10 Egyptian plagues actually had some symbolism and were related to 10 different Egyptian gods and goddesses, which I thought was really interesting. It's just this other article, I don't know, but anyway, so it was just kind of saying again, like the God of Israel was more powerful than the false gods that the Egyptians were worshiping. And then also there were 10 plagues, kind of meaning which is symbolic of all of it, completely plagued. So let me scroll down here and find, okay, so the very first one corresponding to an Egyptian god was Hapi, the Egyptian god of the Nile. And I'll just show you, this is kind of you can't see that very well, huh? That's kind of the picture of that one. And so the first plague is water turned to blood. And that was important because they couldn't drink the blood, I guess, and so they were digging, looking for water, and it lasted 7 days, and Pharaoh was just not listening. I think after the 7 days he said, okay, take it away or something like that, change it back. And anyway, so that was interesting to me. And then the second one was it was called Heket, the Egyptian goddess of fertility, water, and renewal. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this very well. Anyway, that's the second one. Maybe I'll just show you another time. So she has a frog head, and I thought that was really interesting. And so then the second plague was the frogs, And then the third one was, and then the other thing that I thought was really interesting that they talked about in that podcast, the two men that talked about it, was that the magicians kept mimicking, they were able to turn water into blood also, and they were able to create frogs also. And they said it's really interesting because you would think that if someone comes in and starts destroying your house, because these plagues were all they were causing major problems, that you wouldn't show how powerful you are by also destroying your house. You'd think that they would show how powerful they were by removing some of the frogs, or otherwise not adding to the plagues that they were experiencing. And I thought that was really funny. And then the other thing was I guess the Egyptians were super focused on hygiene, because if they had like lice, that they were considered unclean and not able to serve their gods. And so the third plague, I believe, was lice. Let me just double check here. Yeah, I think the third, lice. And so that was like basically making them unclean. And then the magicians were not able to make lice. And they basically told Pharaoh, like, this is a real god. Like, this god's legit. Like, you need to listen to this guy. Like, we can't, he's way more powerful than we are. And of course the Pharaoh didn't like that. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. And that the plague of lice was similar to the Egyptian god Geb, the Egyptian god of the earth, which I thought that was interesting. I'll just show you this article later because you can't really see the pictures when I hold it up to the phone. Then the next one is the Egyptian god Khepri, the god of creation, movement of the sun, and rebirth. And that was related to the plague of the swarms of flies. So kind of like, you know, death and destruction and disease. And then the next one was Hathor, the Egyptian goddess of love and protection. And that's the one where all the cattle and livestock ended up having this terrible pestilence that ended up killing them. And then the next one was the Egyptian goddess of Isis. She was the goddess of medicine and peace, and that was the one where all the Egyptians were covered in like boils and sores. And then the next one was Nut, the Egyptian goddess of the sky, and that correlates to the plague of hail and fire coming down and just destroying the land of Egypt, except for the area of where the Israelites were. And also, like, I don't think the Israelites got lice. Maybe they did, but they weren't affected by a lot. Like, their livestock didn't die from that other plague, and they didn't have the hail on them. And I don't think there were swarms of flies in their area either, so they were kind of being protected from these. So it was basically like sending a very clear message to Pharaoh and his people that, like, this is from the Israelite God and he is fighting for his people. So then the Seth, the Egyptian god of storms and disorder, the correlating plague was locusts, and they came and just like destroyed everything, all the food. And that was one that like really stressed out Pharaoh. He was like, okay, not the food, like we're gonna starve. I think at least that was one of the ones that he was really stressed out about. And then Ra, of course, the sun god, and that is supposed to be like the most worshipped god in Egypt other than Pharaoh himself. And you know, he's the god of the sun, but then of course the plague correlating to that was darkness for 3 days. And then of course, you know, Pharaoh was supposed to be the greatest Egyptian god of all, and he was actually the son of Ra and manifest in the flesh. And so he's supposed to kind of be like the guardian of all of Egypt. And just kind of reading through here. But yeah, so then the last one, of course, was that the firstborn of all the Egyptians and livestock would die. And the Israelites too, if they didn't put the blood of an unblemished lamb on their doorway. So they had to actively kind of work to prevent that plague from coming to pass in their lives as well, where before it was just kind of passively worshiping the Lord was enough. But in this one, they had to kind of do something on their own to protect themselves also. And I'm going to let you go because Mia is here. So I love you so much, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. Bye-bye.